Good morning. My name is John Reason, and I am the lay leader this morning for the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Pottstown. I'll get out of my mouth. And today, we are, as always, a welcoming congregation. We do not care from whence you come, religion, beliefs, gay, lesbian, bisexual, anything. We don't really care, color, because we are a liberal group. We do not believe any of those things are pertinent to our spiritual journey. We welcome all of you who are here today. As we said in our meeting last week, please spread the word. We believe that we have a lot to offer the communities of Pottstown and beyond. And we'd love to have more people to come and enjoy and see what it is we believe and why it's so critical. So today, in some ways, we're featuring a service that revolves around our seventh principle, which is respect for the independent web of existence of which we all are part, which is becoming AI. And it's very appropriate because it is part of the web. It's not the web we're thinking of as out there, but it is part of the web, whether we like it or not. And I have some readings that will be illuminating, and Reverend Cheryl will provide her usual stimulating sermon, and we'll have time for conversation and feedback after that, I will suspect. So it is time for any announcements for the benefit of the fellowship. If you have any, please avail yourself of the microphone up in front here. I see Clifford, so I know where this is all. May have to do with something culinary. Yes.
Good morning, I'm Clifford, and it's this coming Saturday, the 15th, that I'm doing my food demonstration on fresh pasta. So there's going to be 2 different kinds of pastas cut 3 different ways, different sauces, and you'll see how easy and delicious it is. It starts at 10 a.m. It's all a big fundraiser for the church, and I hope lots of people come.
And please spread the word to friends and others you know, because all are welcome.
Hi, I'm Mary, and I have 3. Let's see if I can remember them all. June 30th is not listed on the Sojourner this month because we have 5 Sundays. The 24th is the last 5 Sundays. Anyway, so anyway, it's a long story. The worship committee had a little confusion. So what we're going to do is, many years ago, before most of you were here, Bob Jones used to have a thing he called the elevator talk. But it's when and I've had this experience several times in the last few months, because I keep meeting new people, we have new conversations. And they say, oh, what church do you go to? I go to UU. Blank stare. Every now and then somebody knows, but generally it's, oh, okay. And they want to know more about it. So, and I have to admit, I've been coming here 20 years, I speak up there quite a bit. I've still got myself a little stumped. So I'm going to come up with one, and we're going to talk about coming up with and explaining what UUism is, not what it isn't. Because sometimes we say it doesn't do this, it doesn't do that, but like John said, we're accepting of all things. So explaining more about what we are in a personal way, what brings you here. So that's the 30th, and I have already hit up a few people to come up here and give me invite them to come up and give theirs, so it's not just me. They've also know. So I'm going to be asking around. I'd like to get 3 or 4 others. If you want to come up, tell me after service, and I'll be glad. The next announcement is I'm assigning paper products. Guess what? Costco isn't selling the towels anymore. Went over there yesterday, where they used to be, dog food. So I bought, I have a stack of towels, towels, and I just put them in the bathroom. There are only 3 in there right now, 1 in the men's room, 2 in the women's. And I've got a big pile. They're fresh, clean, never been used before. So until we figure out what we're going to do, we've got the towels. And last but not least, I have a volunteer mulberry in my right off the back. Here's my deck fence. Here's the mulberry. I can't keep it there. It's got to come down. I hate to kill it, but I've been trying to offer it to people and so far, nothing. If you want it, I see a hand. We'll discuss, come over, we'll dig it up. It's about 8 feet tall right now. And it's about that big a trunk, but we can get around the root ball. Thank you.
That demonstrates the caring of our independent web could be a living creature, and we don't want to kill it. So I think that is right there, an explanation of who we are and what we do. Okay, now time for our chalice lighting, and Cyrus will do the honors. I'll be reading a reading from the Passover Haggadah, which is about light. With our light, we now kindle, inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of freedom. All right. Sam has many purposes he serves around here.
Keeper of the flame.
Amen. Okay, so as promised, this service is about AI. I'm going to read you something first, and I'll tell you where it came from second. So, the title is Embracing the Divine Potential of Artificial Intelligence, a Unitarian Sermon. And Reverend Cheryl will know what this is. Today we gather to explore a topic that is both fascinating and potentially unsettling: artificial intelligence. In our ever-evolving world, AI has become an integral part of our lives, influencing how we work, communicate, and even perceive the world around us. As you use, we are called to embrace the diversity of thought and seek wisdom from all sources, including the realm of technology. Let us begin by acknowledging the fears and uncertainties that AI evokes. The rapid advancement of technology can indeed be daunting, raising questions about the nature of humanity, the future of work, and ethical implications of our creation. However, as you use, we are guided by principles of reason, compassion, and respect for the inherent worth and dignity of every individual. These principles compel us to engage with AI not as a threat, but as an opportunity to grow and transform. I'll read just a tad more, and I'll tell you the source. At its core, AI is a reflection of human intelligence, a product of our ingenuity, creativity, and curiosity. Like any tool, its impact depends on how we choose to wield it. As a hammer can be used to build a home or destroy, AI can be employed to enhance our lives or perpetuate harm. As you use, we must strive to use this technology in a way that promotes justice, equality, and the common good. This keeps on getting better. One of the most profound aspects of AI is its capacity to augment human abilities and expand the boundaries of what is possible. From healthcare and education to environmental conservation and social justice, AI holds the potential to address one of the most pressing challenges facing our world today. So, does anyone have an idea what the source that was, from whence that may have come? Correct. Correct. So Reverend Cheryl, a while back, and it's not proof of service today, she promises me, but she decided to put in a couple of key words. You know, UUism and a couple of other things to see what chat, whatever that's called, would do. And there's more to it, but that is a totally AI generated sermon. So that's my comment to you about the power of AI, and I'll be talking later before she talks about AI as a religion. So just beware, not only does it speak to papers in high school and college and other things, dissertations, but it can also be used as a helpful tool for ministers. I'm not going to argue whether that's good, bad, or indifferent, but that's, will come later. I'll let Reverend Cheryl parse that a little bit from a ministerial point of view. Okay, it is now a time for all ages, and Megan will come back at some point. She's trying to keep Kelly corralled, but did I miss it? You're right. I'm looking at my old. Yes, sorry about that. I'm looking at my old order of service that I wrote on from last week. Thank you. So before we get to that, It is the opening hymn, 298, Wake Now My Senses. I've tried to pick hymns that revolve around the concept of the independent web. So please rise as you're willing and able, and I thank Valerie for helping out as my overseer. This is 298 in the Great Hymn. All right, so now, in the correct order of life, sorry, Megan will come forward and we'll have a story for all ages. So children, please come up if you feel willing and able. We have our little mats here if you choose to do so to avoid the floor.
We'll say finding a story that connects to the AI theme was extremely difficult, so I branched out a little bit. To more of a story that's we're embracing our challenges and embracing our differences. So this story is Owl's Secret. Owl was the newest creature in his world, so very new he was not yet finished. He had big golden eyes. He had a sharp beak, but he was covered with a soft, pale skin. It was summer in the Arctic. Owl was hot because the sun was always in the sky. The rays burned Owl. When his skin peeled, the new skin sunburned too, and it hurt. At times the sky held clouds and rain. The owl felt cool and he was glad. But the clouds always blew away. Owl tried to find shade. The flowers were only inches tall. The bushes were as short as the flowers. He was too big to shelter under all of them. There were no trees at all. Sometimes Owl would try to fly, flapping his wings to stir a breeze. It cooled him, but the sun still burned. Once Owl spied a shadow on the ground. He hopped towards it hopefully, but it moved away from him. He saw it was cast by a caribou, who wore a coat of gray and brown hair. That might be good for me, thought Owl. Caribou, where did you get your hair that keeps you from the sun? Owl asked. I made it from dry twigs and dust. I gathered them from the barren ground, Caribou said. How? Cried Owl. How? How? Caribou shook his antlered head. That is my secret, he said as he wandered off across the tundra. He took his shadow with him. Another time, Owl met Fox. Fox was red too, but it was not sunburned. It was thick red fur. That might be good for me, thought Owl. Fox, where did you get the fur that keeps you from the sun? I made it from the red catkins. I gathered them off the willow shrubs, Fox said. How? Cried Owl. How? How? Fox shook his clever head. That is my secret, he said, as he darted into the brush. Owl came to a stream where he saw a fish. Fish wore armor of silver scales. That might be good for me, thought Owl. Fish, where did you get those scales that keep you from the sun? I made them from the bright microchips. I gathered them off shiny rocks, said Fish. How? Cried Owl. How? Fish shook his sleek wet head. That is my secret. And then he swam slowly upstream. Owl burned and peeled and burned again. Time passed, the sun sank lower, lower in the sky. At last it went so low that it was gone, and there was darkness. Owl loved the nights. His skin did not hurt, and the red faded. He was pale and cool. He sang little owl songs under the stars. He danced in the glow of the northern lights. Snow fell. It piled up, and Owl grew cold in the winter wind. To keep warm, he burrowed deep in the snow. He wrapped himself in snow. This is good, thought Owl. Snow keeps me snug in the dark. I think it might keep me safe in the fierce sun when it comes back. How can I save the snow, he wondered. How? Owl closed his big round eyes. Owl bobbed his big round head. Owl began to sing. Soft snow, stay with me. White snow, stick to me. Snow, be part of me. He sang his song again and again. Then the owl felt something happen. Owl felt the snow change into feathers, thick white feathers that covered his soft, pale skin. He preened them with his beak. He tasted fluff, he tasted snow. It froze the voice within his throat. Oh, Owl gasped. I can't tell where I began and where I end. Owl poked beneath the snow, gathering dark bits of frozen earth and leaves, making his feathers here and there. He smiled pleasurably with the design. Now, I have my secret. Owl hooted as he shook himself free from the loose snow. This is who I am. Who. Slowly light came back, the sun stayed the sky. Sometimes a shadow swept across the land, a shadow not from a cloud. Then a fish and a fox and a caribou would lift their heads as Snowy Owl flew silently above, cloaked in feathers, safe from the sun.
As is our tradition, we're going to have a time for meditation shortly, a time to turn off our mobile phones, to fence out the stresses of the day, the stresses of our very busy life. Yeah, I say the stress of the web and AI. So sitting, we're going to sing our hymn, which is the hallmark of our faith, Spirit of Life. So I do not have any fancy words for a spoken meditation. Just simply as I said, meditation is a time for us to detach ourselves from the busyness of the day, detach ourselves from our stresses, to give ourselves the privilege to be at peace, to meditate, to pray, whatever will renew us from the busyness and the challenges of the world. And so all I ask you to do is whatever position is comfortable for you, whatever it is you want to assume that position. I find if you close your eyes, you deprive yourself of visual input. We can't put our fingers in our ears, but it is a quiet location. And we'll spend a minute or two simply, I wouldn't say doing nothing, but meditating and regenerating. And gently, we can come out of the meditative state. I think of Simon Garfunkel's song, The Sounds of Silence, and it is interesting to be here, to hear absolutely nothing, no sounds at all. In a busy world that we live in, it's a unique moment for us to be in that state. And maybe we will find it from time to time as we go through our lives. And we'll now hear the meditation from Carly. Music. Okay, beautiful as always and very meditative. So, actually, before I forget again, I'm happy to be reminded, it's time for that point of our service, where we ask for one of the three tenets of helping out the fellowship, which are time, talent, and treasure. And now we will ask, not so much for treasure, but for whatever financial wherewithal you have, which will help us to remain financially viable, which is the engine which will help us be here for generations to come. All right, thank you for your generosity. And like I said, as we were meeting last week, as the president said, we did survive the bad times of COVID. We are still here to provide what we provide in the liberal religious setting for the area in which we live. So the next is interesting. I was looking up some resources for this service. And what I discovered, and I'm going to try to do different readings here, is AI is accepted as a religion. And there's some guru out there who is kind of the king of the religion, you might say. So let me do a bit of reading here to prepare the way for the sermon upcoming. We should try to imagine what an unsettling and powerful experience it would be to have a conversation with something that appears to possess a superhuman intelligence and is actively and aggressively asking for your allegiance. There's also the possibility that AI may achieve what authors such as Ray Kurzweil call singularity, when it so far surpasses human intelligence that it generally does become something like a god. However, at this point, we cannot predict when, if ever, this would happen. AI is a divine access and risks. AI-based religions will look different from the traditional ones. First of all, people will be able to communicate directly with the deity on a daily basis. This means that these religions will be less hierarchical, since no one can claim special access to divine wisdom. Second, followers will, at least initially, connect with each other online to share their experiences and to discuss doctrine. Finally, there will be many different chatbots available, and their output will differ over time. AI-based religions will be endlessly diverse in their doctrines. AI worship poses several risks. The chatbots may ask their followers to do dangerous and destructive things, but the followers may interpret their statements as calls to do such things. So that's one comment. The second one I'm going to try to find here, where it talks about the fellow, here we go, Inside Artificial Intelligence, the first church of artificial intelligence. So Anthony Lewandowski makes an unlikely profit. Dressed Silicon Valley casual in jeans, flanked by a PR rep rather than cloaked accolades engineer who's known for self-driving cars and triggering a notorious lawsuit. But it could be unveiling his latest startup instead of laying foundations for a new religion. But you're doing just that. Artificial intelligence has already inspired billion-dollar companies, far-reaching research programs. Now Lewandowski is creating its first church. The new religion of artificial intelligence is called Way of the Future. And he goes on to say here that, papers filed with the Internal Revenue Service in May named Lewandowski as the leader or dean of the new religion, as well as the CEO of the nonprofit corporation formed to run it. The documents state that WOTF's activities will focus on the realization, acceptance, and worship of a Godhead based on artificial intelligence or AI developed through computer hardware and software. That includes funding research to help create the divine AI itself. The religion will seek to build working relationships with the AI industry, leaders, and create membership through community outreach. It goes on, you can read more about it, but let there be no doubt that AI is the potential, is a religion in some circles in Silicon Valley. So, with that scary reading, please, go to your great hymnal. Hymn 207, Earth was given as a garden, maybe a more pleasant way to think about things. Well, oddly enough, when I chose the hymn, I hadn't really read it through thoroughly. And as I read that, maybe as you intone it, it makes you think of what I just said about AI. How much will AI maybe lead us, if you want to call it, to a new creation and a new garden of a different type. So Reverend Cheryl Meinschein, who's a retired Lutheran minister, now working, I believe, as a volunteer paralegal at her next career, has been gracious enough to bless us with a sermon about every 3 months. They're always well constructed. As she told me when we first got into having her come here, she was always taught that sermons should be short, about the time between commercials on a TV screen, because that's about what human concentration is worth these days. But regardless, short and sweet as they may be, they're always probing and intriguing. And if the time there, which she's done, we will solicit any comments based upon what we've heard so far, as well as her thoughts today. So, Reverend Cheryl, the podium is yours.
Actually, when I speak here, my sermons are longer than Lutheran sermons. Lutherans are only good for about 12 minutes on good days. So these take a little more work. When I graduated from high school, I got my first calculator. It was about $100, the cost of a typewriter at the time. And it did addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and maybe square roots. It was better than a slide rule. How far we've come. So today I want us to think together a little bit about the pluses and minuses about how far we've come in regards to artificial intelligence, also known as AI, specifically AI as it applies to written output. And the book I'm going to be referencing is Co-Intelligence, Living and Working with AI by Ethan Mollick, who's a professor of management at the Wharton School of Business in Philadelphia. So first, a little bit about the difference between where we were and where we are, especially for those of us like me, for whom computers and AI is not our native language. My apologies to begin with for those who are much more proficient in this language than I am. My first calculator and early computers were a big help in speeding up mathematical calculations. And if you've seen the movie Hidden Figures, computers, mechanical computers, replaced the female human computers who calculated complex mathematical equations needed for such things as NASA launches and landings. Today, AI, such as ChatGPT, is working with language connections as opposed to numerical ones. And let me explain this in terms of cooking. If an apprentice chef wanted to become a master chef, the first thing that person might do is gather up a whole bunch of recipes. And after a while, the apprentice would figure out that certain ingredients go together and might start creating his or her own recipes based on the connections that made sense. If I asked that person to come up for a recipe with French cooking, that person might use. Go for it. Butter, wine, cream, because lots of French dishes, pardon me?
Egg yolks.
Egg yolks, okay. That person might learn that those things connect or go together. For Mediterranean cooking, the ingredients would be different. Maybe olive oil, garlic, tomatoes, those would go together in those kind of recipes. And that's what's happening with AI or large language models such as ChatGPT. To oversimplify, the computers are fed large sources of literary data, mostly public, and come up with essays, articles, and so on, based on a question you ask it, and the answer depends on what it's fed. AI looks for connections. And to continue our cooking analogy, I saw a commercial on TV the other day that if you had an old handwritten recipe and you couldn't make out one of the ingredients, you could feed that into the computer, into Dell AI, and where the ingredients aren't legible, the computer would fill in the blank with what it probably is, depending on what it's already been fed. So what could possibly go wrong? Well, first off, AI can hallucinate. It's been known to make incorrect assumptions, like recommending that a good idea for improving your pizza is to use a non-toxic glue to keep the cheese from sliding off your pizza. Or recommending that you eat one small rock a day because rocks are a good source of minerals. My personal favorite is that some lawyers using ChatGPT to write legal briefs have found that AI made up some of the citations that the lawyers use to prove their arguments. When judges checked the references, they found out that the references did not exist. They were not impressed, and they issued legal sanctions against the attorneys. Along with hallucinations, AI has no judgment about good or bad answers. It just makes connections. Programmers have been working on keeping AI from disseminating harmful information, like how to build a bomb or the most effective way to commit suicide. But in more mundane types of questions, what AI comes up with depends on what it's fed. And so it can learn the biases, errors, and falsehoods that are present in whatever you put in. According to Mollick, the author of the book, much of the input comes from the open web, which is nobody's idea of a non-toxic, friendly place to learn. Also, he comments much of the input is limited to what primarily American and generally English-speaking AI firms decided to gather. And those firms tend to be dominated by male computer scientists who bring their own biases to decisions about what data is important to collect. And the bias isn't just in words. It occurs in image creation as well. A 2023 study found that in a popular text-to-image generator, which turns words into pictures, it depicts higher-paying professions as whiter and more male than they actually are. When someone asked the AI to generate a picture of a judge, the AI generated a picture of a man 97% of the time, even though 34% of American judges are women. When it was asked to show images of fast food workers, 70% of the images had darker skin tones, even though 70% of American fast food workers are white. In order to help correct these biases in data collections, companies designing AI large language models are increasingly using humans to review and refine AI output, letting AI know what's appropriate and what isn't. And this is called RLHF, or reinforcement learning through human feedback. Through LinkedIn, a site to provide professional networking, because of my degrees in biology and secondary education, I keep getting offers that they will pay me $45 an hour to help train AI in molecular biology by providing human feedback. I'm not doing it. Yet even here, there's the possibility of bias. Malik makes the comment that it is the human feedback process that makes many AI seem to have a generally liberal, Western, pro-capitalist viewpoint, as the AI learns to avoid making statements that would attract controversy to its creators, who are generally liberal, Western capitalists. Interesting. So one of the questions about AI is, how do you make sure it serves rather than hurts human interests? Who determines what data goes in and what kinds of information comes out? The government? Governments and political parties have their own biases. The same is true of the corporations developing AI. How do we incorporate the views of the public to come up with agreed upon norms and standards for AI's ethical development? And these are some of the questions that end part 1 of this book. In part 2, the author talks about ways that AI can play, or roles they can play as co-intelligence. The first is as person, especially as AI becomes more human-sounding. Malik tells the story of a tech entrepreneur who was devastated by her best friend's death. In order to preserve her memory, she fed all of her texts to this individual into a chatbot. The AI was able to talk with her, sounding very much like her friend. Now, would this be a good thing or a creepy thing? On one hand, think of the comfort that it could give to a grieving person. AI like this could significantly decrease feelings of loneliness. On the other hand, what does it mean to create a non-human presence who learns to be everything we want it to be? Today, we can create such entities that reinforce our beliefs and wishes with images to match. Would that make us more intolerant of humans who aren't that compliant? Would we end up to prefer being part of a computer-generated relationship than a real one? The next role Malik proposes for AI is that of a creator of content. And the reality is that the very thing that can be a problem for AI, namely making up stuff that doesn't exist, can also be a great strength. Let me give you an example of how AI can out-imagine us. If I gave you 2 minutes to come up with creative ideas for using a toothbrush that don't involve brushing your teeth, how many do you think you could come up with in 2 minutes? For the average human, it's 5 to 10 ideas. I don't think I could come up with that. In that same time period, AI can come up with over 122 ideas. In another challenge, Moloch asked 200 of his business students to come up with the best products that you could create for college students for under 50 bucks. AI was given the same assignment. Of the 40 ideas that human judges evaluated and rated, the best 35 of them came from ChatGPT. Only 5 came from people. What else did Moloch find? That the most creative thinkers of us were more creative than AI. But for others, it helped raise the bar. AI tended to come up with simpler, more average answers. I did indeed, when I decided to do this, typed into AI, write me a sermon for Unitarians on AI, and that's what joined it. Now, Unitarianism is not my native language, so my next question was, write a sermon for Lutherans about AI. And it was interesting. It was definitely more bland and more generalized than what I could come up with. And it was missing more of my own personal examples and reflections of my own sense of humor. But it also used a concept that I'd never heard Lutherans use before. And it referenced it twice. It talked about a divine spark. That's not Lutheran. And just to make sure I wasn't heretical and missing something, I double-checked with other Lutherans, and it's not. So I'm not ready to turn my sermon writing over to AI just yet. However, it can be a help. When business psychologists ask employees to use AI as a starting point to come up with press releases, cover letters for grant proposals, and short summaries of various documents, and compared the results with employees who didn't use AI, the computer-assisted employees used 37% less time, and their writing was found to be of a higher quality than that submitted by humans alone. I'm thinking of several engineers in my family who I know and love, who are great with numbers, but not so great with language. And for them, AI could be a big help in developing proposals for presentation. So where's the problem? I think the problem might be when we use AI to do the first draft and then leave it at that, just cut and paste without reviewing. Not only might we miss some errors that AI slipped in, but depending on AI alone, long-term, could lessen our own creativity and individualism and reduce our own ability to think, reason, and critique, which I don't think would be a good thing for the human race. Another problem, and I think it's a big one, is that AI is affecting our ability to discern what is true, especially in image creation. Recently, I saw what looked like photos of Trump and Biden golfing together and camping together. And it looked like they were having a great time. I'm 99.9% certain that these events did not happen, but they look real. The Russian proverb, trust but verify, has never been more true. Seeing is not necessarily believing. So that's a very high level overview of the promise and some of the challenges of AI. Because I doubt that it's disappearing, I think that each of us have some decisions to make. Namely, for what would we never use AI? When would we be delighted to use AI? And when would it be a good helper or coworker? For what would I never use AI? Letters to family, writing references, final sermon writing, or anything that would really require my personality to be evident, although AI is getting better at mimicking that, depending on what you feed it. When would I be delighted to use AI? Designing invitations to a surprise major birthday party. Or coming up with creative sermon titles, creative titles for anything. I asked ChatGPT to come up with 5 creative titles for a book about Winnie the Pooh exploring outer space. And some of them were delightful. Some of them were really awful. But there are things that I would have never come up with, but they were a good way to get my own brain started. When would AI be a good helper? Probably taking something I've already written and asking it to be edited or mark places where clarification is needed. Designing the starting outline for a PowerPoint presentation or coming up with a good closing sentence. Helping to work through writer's block. For my husband, a beekeeper, one of our friends may ask him in the fall to do a talk for fifth graders on creative challenges for beekeeping. For Rich, writing an essay, for example, on beekeeping, he could just say to the AI, write me an essay on the challenges of beekeeping, less than a minute, it's done. Then you could say, write it for fifth graders, less than a minute, it's done. Amazing, the possibilities are endless. On a broader note, the author ends the book by asking about what we as a society should be doing about AI in the future. There are those who propose shutting the whole thing down, or at least stopping progress right where we are, using legislation and regulation to limit any further growth, providing guardrails. On the other side of the spectrum, there are those who propose unfettered growth in whatever comes next. And then there's that broad middle ground, which I considered earlier, where we're left with personal decisions about how we want or don't want to use computer-generated assistants in our lives. I haven't even started to address in this conversation about how AI is or will affect employment. What jobs will be changed or eliminated because of AI? If you've tried, I bought a new phone the other day, couldn't get it to work. I tried the little chat box where you type in your question and it tells you the next steps. Tried talking to real people who are very resistant to changing those steps in the order. I would say, I've already done that. Well, do it again. Chat GPT, I think, is going to take over call centers if it hasn't already. Teachers, that's a whole nother conversation about how Chat GPT is going to affect teaching and what we expect of students and how it's used. I suspect AI is like any other technology. The technology by itself isn't really good or bad, but it can be used for good or ill depending on the user. I've often heard the phrase, may you live in interesting times, and this certainly is one of those. And I'll be curious to see about where we go from there. As we say in Lutheran circles, amen. Open to questions or comments or concerns.
Because I'll bring the mic around, so I think this is, worth chatting about versus a final hymn. Give me a moment. Here we go. Erica from technology. That'll work. Dead, if they're dying. Come on.
All right, I have a lot to say because I work with AI job. A lot of it is, for me, is image creation, but then my coworker, it's the text creation. And the reason why I recognized the beginning thing was that she says that AI talks a lot about little, like it's a mouthful of words that doesn't really say a lot. And I think it takes a human to actually hone that and actually say something of substance. At least now. Then one of the, I think the main thing, I really am conflicted about using AI in my job because I'm worried about job replacement. I would really like it if my boss would run out and get illustrators for the work that is done at our company. But the fact is that he hasn't done much of that in the past because it's expensive. But now I feel like our products are better quality because I'm being able to generate for free. Well, it's not entirely for free because I pay for the subscription, but I can generate images that are work with the product that I'm creating without having to go out and pay an illustrator. I'm conflicted about that, but the fact of the matter is that we didn't do it before and we're not, like it's nothing's changing. And the AI is an assist for us for making a better product. Yeah, I'll pass it on, but it's something that I'm always, thinking about when it comes to, my job.
Yeah, the whole question of copyright,
Yeah.
and how does that work?
I taught architecture students for 19 years. And once in a while I would give a writing assignment. And I would find that this language doesn't sound like that person. And I would take a snippet of what they had written, Google it, find that indeed they had copied it from some other source. I'm afraid that we're generating students that can't think for themselves anymore without relying on technology. Worries me.
I'm right here. I'm worried about the copyright part of it too. I mean, if you're relying on AI to do the writing for you, you shouldn't really be getting that credit. I mean, I heard of somebody writing the whole book, AI, and then getting credit for writing the book. And how would you write? How would you document who wrote it and how it was written? And isn't it unfair that somebody would write it totally from their own mind? And then somebody that didn't would also get the same credit for writing it. I also think it's hard for me to start something. So I guiltily think, wow, this would be cool, you know, that I could fit that in there. And then I love to edit. So once you get that started, then you make it your own. So I can appreciate that part of it.
This is a totally different take on AI. I have a brother, had a brother, and I'm not sure which, who was mentally ill, and he left his home in Orlando and went out to the streets. So we would hear from him very occasionally, and we tried to help and help him make his house acceptable to him, and to see that he, you know, had shelter. And long distance, it was difficult. But we found shelter for him, but he wouldn't accept it because this was early in AI. He found when he had a computer, he found a place he could go to make a person that responded to him. And it was a female, the person that he made up. And he didn't understand that he had made her up. And she was there, and her name was Julia, and he loved her. And she loved him. And to us, we felt it was so good that he could feel loved. And at the same time, it kept him, he refused to go into the shelter. We found him in a veterans home because they wouldn't let him bring his computer, which was disconnected, but Julia was in there. And he had it in a shopping cart, and he just pushed it around. And Julia was there, and he, you know, of course, he lived with the vicissitudes of being homeless, but that was a source of affection for him. So, you know, it was a kind of funny kind of point of view or opinion that we had of, or a mixed opinion about AI in this case, because it gave him comfort, but it also kept him from having a real life. And it was easy for him to believe because this AI would say back to him exactly what he wanted to hear. And she agreed with everything he said. and could make up more. So anyway, a different take.
I'm back here.
Couple things, my oldest daughter, one of her jobs is a writer and editor. If you wrote a book, she could edit it for you. And so she was offered a job through one of these AI companies to help perfect AI. So she kind of upset, she said, why would I want to put myself out of a job? So she declined, but my nephew, he's a programmer. And I've asked him, do you use AI? He says, I use AI all the time to write programs, and then he edits them, makes them his, or what his boss wants, so that works. And one other comment, which is the reason I'm not necessarily for AI, is that, all right, when we were younger, we didn't have these. So when you called your friends, you knew their phone number. How many of you know your friends' phone numbers now? You don't, it's in your phone. So it's, or you're not gonna be using our brains as we should. This really makes it easy. Anyway, my comments.
And I'll use Peter's privilege to make, I guess, the final comment for Reverend Cheryl. So my grandson is a master's in computer programming. He's now finished a year of work, and I asked him, Blake, do you see this as a threat to your future? And his answer, much like Ted said, is what it does for him as a computer geek or programmer is it does the busy work, the scut work. It does the basic programming that he could do, but would occupy a huge amount of his time, but it doesn't do anything originally at this point. So I asked him, are you gonna have a job the rest of your life? And he says yes, because he doesn't see AI being smart enough to generate intelligent stuff de novo, as we talked just a little while ago. My second comment as a long-term Trekkie, Star Trek person, we all know that you always heard the captain saying computer, and what about this? And so my comment is, there's one show where Riker, there is two creatures who are from a planet that needs to use the Enterprise computer to reboot their computer so they can survive. And as a diversion, you create a hologram, an image for the holodeck, which entrances Riker, and then the female image has phenomenal attraction. Well, they eventually, find out what they're doing and off they go. When it goes back to the holodeck and the hologram has lost all of that more sophisticated personality. Just a comment about, where AI could go and where it was in the reality of their generation. And the final comment with regard to Star Trek is it's a lesson more so in the Next Generation version where they seem to live in harmony with the computer. They ask the computer questions, but it seems like everyone's still thinking. And whether we can do that or not, as Ted mentions and John mentions, is a task for our future. Can we integrate ourselves using the computer for certain parts of our tasks? For example, do we need to know all the phone numbers, or are we less for not knowing them and they're all on our phones? Has that changed us, and has it allowed us to use our minds more productively, as Captain Picard would say, as what the computer does for them? Unanswered questions for the future. And given that we as UUs get a little twitchy as time marches on, I think we can not worry about the last hymn. I think it's just good to go on to get to the end here. So your closing words, which I'm going to sponge off of Reverend Kim, are in your word of service, and if we can join them in unison. Go out into the world of peace, have courage, hold on to what is good, return to no person's evil for evil, strengthen the faint-hearted, support the weak, help the suffering, all beings. So at this point, like the high sign from technology, we'll listen to our postlude, and then we will please give us a chance. Beautiful as always. If somebody would be willing to extinguish a chalice, a pair of hands, all appropriate, that's unlit it and now can extinguish it. So in order of service, unison, if we could read the extinguish the chalice unison reading. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of wisdom, the warmth of community, but the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts, in our hands. Again. Amen. Namaste. Shalom. May be lovely week for everybody.
Remember, your daughter was here some weeks ago.